My question for this week, we're going to go back in time just a smidge. Back to our high school days. Okay, so maybe it's 2 smidges. So, were you in any extracurriculars? And if you were, did you ever hold an office? So, some of us kind of talked during the break. So I want to start with Matt this week because I didn't hear yours.
So yes, I did a few extracurriculars, but no, I did not hold any offices because if you've met me, you know that confidence is not my strong suit. So running for an office was beyond my capabilities. I did yearbook for a couple of years. I did the creative writing club / magazine all 4 years. Technically, band was also extracurricular, even though it was a class. And then I didn't participate in any of the matches, but for a year or two, I did go to chess club, which really just turned into like playing chess after school. So yes, like all of the nerd things, that was me.
Tabitha, what about you?
I did literally everything I could get my hands on in high school, but the only thing I ever was like an officer for was I was the president of my foreign language club my senior year.
Nice. I too did so much stuff. Just talking about my senior year. Granted, it was a class, but I was the A&E and features editor of my newspaper. I was the president of my show choir. I was president of my drama club. And then I was senior class vice president. Still kind of bummed about this. Here I am, 21 years later. So nobody was running for vice president. I was running for president. I got the second highest votes, so they just gave me the vice presidency. Okay, fine, cool, whatever. But the president, she graduated early. Did that mean that I got to move up? It sure didn't.
You didn't get a promotion halfway
I did
through?
not get a promotion. Still bums me out all these years later. Gosh. You're listening to The Geek Awakens with Mitch,
Matt,
Tabitha,
and Lydia.
What's that say about us? Like, we're all like overachievers.
Yes. But also what's funny is you're like the newspaper, the show choir, and I'm like, we had like 3 clubs, guys. Like
Suppose you had foreign language. Was that just like English but without a southern accent?
No, it was French and Spanish. Oh, yeah. But it was the same teacher for both. She just spoke both languages.
Did she do like French with a Spanish accent and then Spanish with a French accent?
No, she was actually I think she spoke like 6 languages. And I don't know what the hell she was doing in Hamilton County, but she was originally from Benton. So, just really good with languages. She really liked her job. I thought she was great. A lot of people didn't like her, but I always tended to get along with the teachers nobody liked because I was like, I also don't like you people. So.
Well, somebody who speaks that many languages, they're probably a witch. So.
Yeah, obviously. No other explanation for that.
All right, so let's go ahead and start. Okay, so total aside, Lydia is not here tonight, as you can probably tell by now. And I am sitting in Lydia's chair because I thought that it would be easier than setting up my mic and mic stand and all that kind of stuff. But I can see what she means, like when it like just like randomly falls on her, because this is going to fall at some point throughout this this episode. And you know what? I'm just going to leave it. It's fine. So anyway, let's go ahead and open up the poll list. what's on our pull list this week? It's fine. So we're going to start this week with Rick and Morty Finals Week, Old Man Morty. It is out now from Oni Press, written by Alex Fire with art by Fred C. Stressing. So Morty has failed his last 4 exams. Looking for a miracle, he asks Rick for help, but when they are visited by Old Man Morty, he takes normal-aged Morty on a journey. Tabitha, you read this. What'd you think?
I actually really like this. I know the last couple of Rick and Mortys that we've had, I haven't necessarily been the biggest fan of because they kind of stopped feeling like just watching episodes of the show on paper. This kind of felt like that again, and I really enjoyed it. They had a lot of that fourth wall break in this, and that is part of that joy in Rick and Morty for me. There were also some really good one-liners from Old Man Morty, and it was also a little jarring because Old Man Morty, the way he was drawn, made me very uncomfortable. So I had a good time with this.
I want to pick your brain for a second because
I will accept a lobotomy. Thank you.
So this is one of many of the finals week specials that Rick and Morty has had throughout, I believe, the summer. I thought that they were all standalones, but the way that I read the description for this one, it sounded like maybe they were all kind of connected. Did you get that?
Yeah, because if in the beginning of this one where it's Morty reflecting back on failing all those exams, all the scenes he's picturing are scenes from things we've been reading, where he's been on an adventure instead of studying or learning.
Okay. Because I think maybe we have talked about some of the other finals weeks.
Yeah.
But I haven't read them, so I didn't know. I didn't know if they were connected or what the case may be. So, okay, cool. But yeah, is it something that you'd be totally lost if you had just picked up Old Man Morty?
No, not at all. It's just kind of snippets. It's literally just one page basically where it shows the adventures he's been on.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
So, the other book that we're going to talk about is Calavera P.I. It's out November 13th from Oni Press by Marco Finnegan. So it's 1925. Juan Calavera was a private investigator protecting the Chicano barrios when the police wouldn't. He ends up getting killed with a gunshot wound to the stomach. 5 years later, on Dia de los Muertos, he is summoned from the dead to help an old friend solve a kidnapping. So this was one of those books. I read this back on election night. By the time you guys are listening to this, it's well past election night, so you're gonna be like, why did you read it 3 weeks ago? But anyway, so my mind was elsewhere, so I definitely want to go back and reread this. However, I really love this premise, and I really did enjoy myself while I was reading this. I liked how we got kind of the backstory. We saw who, Juan was beforehand, and we don't meet his, brought back from the dead self until the very end. This is a 4-issue miniseries, so obviously the other 3 issues are, going to be heavy on him, but, I wish that we had gotten just a little bit more than just, the sample that we got in this first issue. But that said, this is really fun, and plus, it's a period piece, so that's also a good time. So I'm here for it. I'm ready for the rest. Tabitha, what'd you think?
I really liked this. I sometimes have a hard time with comics where it kind of feels like they're dropping you off in the middle of the story, and this one did, and it didn't. My only gripe with this one, and it's mostly the ending, which is I know something you kind of enjoyed, but it felt like it happened too fast. She's goes to the graveyard and it's I wish he was here. And then there's no lead up to that. He's just suddenly oh, yeah, I'm back. Okay, cool. Let's do this. I could have done with a a little bit more waiting, or like her trying to deal with it without him first and then him popping back in instead of him just like immediately coming back from the dead. Like, I wish there was more meat to that part of it. But other than that, I really enjoyed this and I really want to read more.
All right, let's go to Guilty Pleasure Dumpster Fire.
Is it a guilty pleasure or is it a dumpster fire?
So, back in the before times, which was before election night 2024, we thought that it would be fun to have an election-themed movie for this month's installment of Guilty Pleasure Dumpster Fire.
We were wrong.
Yeah, looking back, we should have gone like a different route to just disassociate from the election.
Still a better choice than probably swing state or swing vote.
Swing vote, yeah.
Yeah, true.
Which is our other option.
Oof,
I think
yeah.
that might have been.
Yeah. So, anywho, Election is a 1999 comedy, which, okay, total aside from the notes that I've written, IMDb classified it as a comedy thriller. It is not a thriller, but okay. So, it follows Jim McAllister, who is played by Matthew Broderick, a high school government teacher and student government advisor, and Tracy Flick, played by Reese Witherspoon, who, at the beginning of the movie, is the only student running for student body president. Jim is not a fan of Tracy, mostly because of her affair with a fellow teacher and Jim's best friend that led to the other teacher's dismissal and subsequent divorce. Because Jim doesn't want to be alone with Tracy, he convinces Paul Metzler, again, total aside, this is a hashtag Springfield Problems thing. Every time they said Metzler, I thought they were saying Metzger. But anyway, Paul Metzler is played by Chris Klein, a popular football star out for the season. Paul's sister Tammy, played by Jessica Campbell, also runs to get back at Paul for stealing her girlfriend. So, Election wasn't a big success. This was Chris Klein's first movie, which he's probably best well known for the American Pie movies. So it had an estimated $25 million budget. It brought in $119,080 in its opening weekend.
Wow.
Yeah. Its domestic gross ended up being $902,041. While its worldwide gross, now I'm putting an asterisk here. I got these numbers from IMDb, and when I tell you the worldwide gross, it's not going to make sense. So, the domestic gross, like I said, $14,902,041. The worldwide gross, $14,902,280. So you're telling me the rest of the world, it got a little bit more than $200? That doesn't make sense. I'm not sure that those numbers are right, but that's what IMDb said. However, like it has, gotten a bit of a cult following. Critics did actually, they loved this movie. It got 34 award nominations, including an Oscar nom for Best Writing Screenplay based on material previously produced or published. This is based off of a novel, I believe it's of the same name. I think it's also called Election. So, IMDb has a rating of 7.2 out of 10, and on Rotten Tomatoes, the tomato meter score is 92%. But especially with that gross, is Election a guilty pleasure or a dumpster fire? So if you've never listened to this, which it's kind of weird if you're just like randomly listening to this episode first.
But welcome.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, stay. Please. So if you've never listened to an episode where we do a guilty pleasure dumpster fire, we break it up into 4 different categories. What worked about this movie? What didn't work about it? Then we talk about its rewatchability, like especially like if you've seen it before, how did this viewing hold up to previous viewings? And then finally, the main question, is this movie a guilty pleasure or a dumpster fire? Tabitha, since this was your pick this month, what did you like about this movie?
So it's been a really long time since I saw this movie. I remember it like being on TV a lot when it came out, and it was kind of around the time I was in like I think like junior high-ish. And we were talking about being overachievers. I, in some ways, not all, obviously, related to Reese Witherspoon's character, and it wasn't anything spicy. It was just the pressure that she put upon herself to do well all of the time.
Being overachiever.
Yeah. Very, very relatable. This movie was better than I remembered, and I don't know if it was better than I remembered because it was nice watching a pretend election fall apart instead of a real one this week.
And the two main contestants is somebody way overqualified and somebody way underqualified.
Yeah. Oh. I'm gonna cry again. No, I think the casting was also well done. Chris Klein did not look like he was acting, which kind of gave your heart a little aw, because it was not only his first movie, but like he's just one of those people that when he's acting, you can't tell if he's acting or if he's just being himself. And in this, like his like support of his sister, and he was like, I don't know why she's so mad at me. And I love oblivious characters in things because they bring that like, I don't know, there are people like that in the world, and you're like, okay, that's what that's like. This movie is a giant comedy of errors based on people's perceptions of things and also what people do not notice, and I love that trope.
Mm-hmm. When you called Chris Klein's character oblivious, that is the perfect word for it. Last night I said that he was dumb at one point, and Not Seth was like, well, why is he dumb? I was like, well, I guess he's not dumb, but I can't really describe what he is. But yeah, like very much kind of like aw shucks, very positive, but yeah, oblivious is great. I love the casting. Reese Witherspoon played this character fantastically. It is my headcanon that when she went to college, she reinvented herself as Elle Woods. Also, I loved how Matthew Broderick played somebody who Ferris Bueller would have despised. And that brought me so much joy. There were also like a lot of little things about this movie. There are a lot of like blink and you'll miss it, like puns and things like that. There was one point which like it ended up being part of the story, but when I first saw it, I laughed because I thought it was just kind of like a, like in joke, where Tracy is talking about how Coke is the like, number one selling, soft drink in the world, blah, blah, blah. And it also, spends so much money on advertising when it didn't necessarily need to if it's already number one. And the very next scene, Jim is carrying a can of Pepsi, and it's very clear. It's very, what's the word I'm looking for? Whatever. Like, but it's it's very purposely shown that it's Pepsi. And at first I was like, that's kind of funny. But then it ended up actually being part of the plot. But yeah, like this movie, it was fun. Yeah. Matt, what'd you think?
I am going to agree with you guys that the casting was spot on for this. The dichotomy between Reese Witherspoon's character and Chris Klein's like overachiever and oblivious jock was just so well played. And it was fun. I think what I liked about this was that they were running against each other, but it wasn't like the only person that got mad at the other candidates was Tracy Flick. Like, none of the other candidates gave any shits that anybody else was even running. And I thought that was entertaining and interesting, and like it reflected on Reese Witherspoon's character. I did mention this to Tabitha, and one of the things that worked for me and made me laugh pretty hard was at one point when Matthew Broderick, Mr. McAllister, gets into his car to leave school, and I was like, no, there's no way. There's no way. Yep. He backs out. It's a Ford Festiva. That's what I learned to drive stick shift on. That's what my dad drove. And I was like, oh my God, I remember that car in a high school parking lot. It was a little too close to home, even though my dad's was white and that one was blue. I don't know. Like, I think at the heart of this, it was the casting. I know that you said that it was nominated for the writing, which I think was good, but I think it was. I think the writing in this movie was amplified by the characters and the actors that played those characters.
So, this wouldn't be a guilty pleasure dumpster fire if it didn't also have some bad qualities to it. One thing that really was jarring for me, and it got better as the movie went on, but like there were too many narrators in this movie. Like at first it was just going between Jim and Tracy, and even that got like jarring at times, because then they were also going back and forth between the past and the present, and like I almost needed like a flow chart to find out where I was. And then we start getting things from Paul's point of view, and I'm like, why? and then we throw in his sister Tammy, and we're getting stuff from her point of view, and I'm like, guys, please, I just put the flow chart away. But yeah, I think that is probably my biggest complaint about this movie. Matt, what about you?
So I know I just talked about the writing as being a high point on this, but I'm torn because I kind of understand the inclusion of Tammy and the motivation for what happened in some of the events that occurred throughout the movie, but for the most part, I kind of felt like Tammy was a non-essential character. Like, she was just in there to play Peter Parker. She was there to just mess with things, to create drama or to create trouble. So, I mean, that's probably my biggest thing. I don't know if this is something I didn't like or I did like, honestly. But there's a couple of scenes where Reese is in the car and then Matthew Broderick's in the car, and they're driving their cars like in different scenes, and it's like that old movie where it's like they're in the car, but it's like a rolling screen that's happening behind them. They're not driving. They're like yanking the wheel 300, all, like turning the wheel all the way around just to make, a 90-degree turn, go left. And then like the car is like the wheels are screeching, and it's like, I feel like I know that it was done for like dramatic effect or for like poking fun, but it was a little much, and it kind of like took me out of the headspace that those characters were in at the time, because I got distracted by their ineffectual driving.
Yeah. You reminded me of one thing before I go to Tabitha about things where it's like I'm not for sure if I liked it or I didn't like it. Can we talk about the bee sting? That was so uncomfortable, especially like when like you see the bee sting Jim's eye, and like you see the progression of the sting and everything, and it's like on the one hand, this is disgusting, and I feel so uncomfortable, and I'm getting like secondhand like pain from this. However, it was really well done. So, Tabitha, what did not work about this movie for you?
So before I say what did not work for me, I'm going to point something out. And you know how when I watch Starship Troopers, I'm the only one who sees all the allegory. We're back there. I'm the only one seeing all the allegory. So this movie it's kind of like an homage to The Breakfast Club. You've got your overachieving princess, you've got your jock, you've got your weird girl, and your nerd character in this movie just happens to be being played by a teacher. Like, it's every single high school trope pulled into a character. So your softball lesbian that ends up at Catholic school is there for a reason. She's not just there to stir the pot. She's there to provide the outlook of yet another group of kids in high school, of people in high school. This is all one big trope. And I think one of the reasons that it's written with your multiple narrators is because it's based on a book. And the book is written in, like, the first part of it is the whole story from one person's perspective. The next part of the book is the whole story from other person's perspective. The next part of the book is the next person's. And they're not tied together like they are in the movie. For the movie, they did it this way. In the book, you're looking at it like you read through one character and you rewind, and then you read it through the other character. This movie did it in a way that it mashed it all together. Okay. All right. Thank you, Evan.
No, I get it.
Everyone is silent, looking around, and I'm like, hello? Class? Bueller? Thank you. Oh, my God. Evan, you're who I will save when the women attack all the men and we kill them all. Just you. That's it.
I get what you're saying about why it was done that way. And in a book setting, it makes a lot of sense. I almost have to go with Mitch, though. When it comes to the movie, it felt head hoppy instead of usually just getting one perspective or one or two perspectives. Yeah.
Yeah, but if they had done it the way the book is written, it would have been a lot of that, like rewind, fast forward kind of thing, and that would have been really irritating. But to give the perspective of all the characters, I don't know how else they would have done that.
Yeah.
Anyway, the things that didn't work for me about this movie is I don't know if a movie about how all men are terrible creeps was the best thing for me to watch this week.
Paul wasn't a creep.
No, but he was dumb and oblivious. You said it yourself. He's just another stereotypical male who would have done what Joe Rogan said. In the long run, that's what we're working with here. I don't think this movie would do well in today's climate because it would be picked apart and torn apart and whatever. And like, obviously we've got, suspicious teacher relationships. My biggest thing is this is one of those movies you have to follow along and look for those Easter eggs that you were saying. And I feel like if you don't and you miss one of those, you have lost the point of the movie. Like the janitor getting revenge. 10 out of 10. Like one of my favorite things. I don't know. I don't know what else really didn't work for me. Like I think I liked this more watching it as an adult than I did the last time I watched it when I was probably still in high school. I don't know.
So that kind of brings us to the next topic is the rewatchability of it. And I wasn't originally going to start with you on this round, Tabitha, but that is such a perfect segue. So let's talk about the rewatchability. Like how else is this different from the last time you watched it?
I think there were a couple of things about it that I did misremember that I've gotten combined with another movie. But for teen movies of the day where there was like heavy music soundtracks and like there was a lot of like there weren't a lot of adults. You were mostly looking at the teenagers, and when you were getting an adult perspective, it was kind of mocking and making fun of them. This had real adults doing real life scary shit, and I think that's important in a movie like this. I think it's important to see what the adults are doing, not just when they're like being annoying to the kids. I also think this is aged well and also poorly at the same time. Like I said, I don't think this would fare well if it was released today. However, these are still real things that happen, and these are, you know, real archetypes of teenagers, and shit like this goes sideways in all kinds of people's lives. So I think it's more relatable for me as an adult than it was when I was a teenager and watching it, mostly because I feel Matthew Broderick's like, God, I love everything, and then all of a sudden one thing goes wrong and you're like, you know what? Fuck it. If I got stung by a bee on the eye, I would probably just give up and lay down on the ground and wait for my body to rot. So good for him for continuing on.
Matt, have you seen this movie before?
I have not.
Okay.
I have not.
So what do you think? Is this something you would watch again?
Yes. I know we usually, like, because we're all old, we usually refer to it as, like, you know, if we were flipping channels and this was on, you know, yes, in that particular instance, like, if that were the case, I flipping channels, saw this movie on, yes, I would leave it on. I would watch through the end. I don't know that I would seek this out on a regular basis, make this one of those that I watch all the time. But at the end of the day, if it's on, or I'm in the doctor's office and this is playing, I'm not going to put in my headphones and ignore everyone. I would probably sit and watch this again.
Also, what kind of doctor are you going to where they're playing this in the waiting room?
I don't know.
That would be really weird.
It would be.
But no, I'm going to try my best to not say exactly what you just said, Matt. But yeah, this also was my first time watching this movie. I think for me, in terms of rewatchability, yeah, it's not, I don't think it's something that I would seek out again. But if it's something where, you know, like I'm going over to a friend's house and they already have it on, and they try to, you know, like, oh, well, let's turn the channel and be like, no, let's keep watching this movie, it's good. Or or, you know, if like somebody suggests watching it, absolutely, sure. While I'm scrolling through Netflix, or I guess this was on Paramount Plus, while I'm scrolling through Paramount Plus, am I going to stop on it and be like, let's revisit this? Maybe not. However, I think that if I had seen this movie, gosh, probably even 10 years ago, I think that it would be different. I think that it would be a movie that, you know, would kind of like be like one of my cult favorite movies. Yeah. I always will go back to like Empire Records. Like I saw that movie way after, you know, it had come and gone and everything. But it was still at that point where I'm like, this movie is amazing. You know, Election was good, but had I seen it before, I think that I would have a much happier relationship with it. So, all right. So I think I know where we're going with this because we all said some pretty nice things about this movie. But is Election a guilty pleasure or a dumpster fire? Matt, we'll start with you.
It definitely has some dumpster fire elements, but I think at the end of the day, this falls in line with being a guilty pleasure.
Yeah. For the sake of this, I'm going to say it's a guilty pleasure, but I don't know that I can actually call it that because I did like genuinely laugh a lot during this movie. I did genuinely enjoy myself watching this movie. Yeah. So yes, guilty pleasure, but not really. Tabitha.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you, Mitch. Like I brought this movie up because I was like, oh man, this will make a great one because it's such a good bad movie. It's not really a good bad movie. It's kind of just a good movie. So. Sorry, I led us astray.
That's why I was certain that you said that you didn't like it because I was like, no, it was good, but yeah.
No, I called it a good bad movie because I was like, it's hokey and it's weird, but like, good bad movie.
Okay, so I think it's fair to say that we all think that this is a guilty pleasure. We did, as I mentioned earlier, Lydia is not here tonight, which I hope you had figured that out by now. However, she did give us some notes on her viewing of it. I'm not going to read all of them, but yeah. So the very first one, she says, "MTV Productions, I'm already terrified," which, yeah, that was one thing that, like, it didn't last long, right?
No.
Yeah.
It probably played more on MTV when they stopped playing music videos than it played anywhere else.
Yeah. Then she goes on to say this is very 90s. Fiddler flashbacks. I already forgot that was like a little part of that movie. Teacher grooming. I'm uncomfortable. Daddy issues. I'm assuming this is sarcasm here, but you know, you can never really read sarcasm. Talking about the country being built on people that weren't raised with a silver spoon aged well. This movie can't decide which teenage drama trope it wants to follow. Kind of going back to what Tabitha said. Also, another thing that Tabitha said, are all of the men in this movie besides Paul creeps? Tammy's speech is the best thing about this so far. That was, I'm assuming, the speech where she's basically, for all you Springfield people, she throws a Frank Lesko where she's like, if you elect me, I'm just going to cancel the whole thing. Huh? I think he barely won. Yeah. Like, when I say barely won, like, it was like less than 100 votes. There's probably a recount, but anyway, I digress. This entire movie is just secondhand embarrassment. What's the point of the motel when you just did it in the house in front of the kid? The janitor gets revenge. I love it. And then she goes on to say, Kevin and I were yelling at the ads for prolonging our agony. I'm going to assume that Lydia thought that it was a dumpster fire. However, she is still outnumbered. This movie is a guilty pleasure. So we got time for one more story. And Tabitha, we're going to you this week. There's some weird things going on with some trains in Australia?
There sure are. Hold on, I'm trying to click on my story, but I keep reopening the Timothy Chalamet lookalike contest that we talked about last episode. I've now reopened that article like 6 times. So
is that all you've been reading in this past week?
Yes. All of my targeted ads are now going to be about Timothy Chalamet. Anyway.
Now we got to start the Timothy Chalamet news desk.
Oh, Jesus Christ. An official for the Australian state of Victoria was talking about some extensive flooding that shut down 2 of the Melbourne train stations, causing delays for the Olivia Rodrigo fans who were in the city for her concert. Originally, the Minister for Transport Infrastructure, Danny Pearson, told the journalists at a press meeting that it was an act of vandalism that led to flooding out the Flagstaff and Melbourne Central lines. But turns out that was incorrect. He said surveillance camera footage appeared to show that a, quote, a more amorous couple in a stairwell dislodged the sprinkler.
Talk about getting wet.
Jesus Christ. Anyway, if you watch the video, he kind of starts cracking up when he says this, and then at the end of it, he says, perhaps a stairwell might be not be the appropriate place to find yourself at the end of a dinner.
So they set off the sprinkler system?
Girl, no, they knocked the sprinkler. They pulled the sprinkler out of a closet in the subway.
So, like, was she, like, hanging on?
I mean, I don't know. It should be on the ceiling, so that's my best guess. I don't know of any sprinklers on the floor. Do you?
I mean, clearly not, but...
Yeah.
That's... You know what, bro? Respect.
That's
impressive.
I mean, you don't know how high the ceiling was. You know how tall she was.
That's fair.
She could have been... It's Australia. She could have been 6'4".
She could have been a kangaroo and like just was able to
Yeah,
jump.
true. Like, we don't know. It's Australia. But yeah, that's what happened. People be banging in the closet in the subway.
And it caused flooding.
And it caused flooding from the sprinkler system. Not
like
an act of vandalism.
I mean, it still kind of was. Like
They
unintentional
didn't
vandalism.
do it on purpose. Well, I mean, they did it on
They
purpose.
did do it on purpose.
They did it on purpose, but they didn't do that part of it on purpose.
It's like the Mile Low Club.
Yeah, because you're in the subway.
Yeah.
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 Not the Jared type of subway though.
Ew, why are you like this? How many foot shames have you gotten?
Well, I got 2 last week and then 2 this week.
And then 2, and then this is 4. So you've
Yes.
had 4 foot shames this week.
Yes. Well, yes.
Yes.
So, plot twist. We're recording 2 episodes. So when I said last week, I really meant like, I don't know, maybe an hour ago.
Oh, and I don't have any concept of time, so I did not know what he was talking about.
Time has no meaning anymore. Matt got your foot shames last time.
Yes.
Yeah.
And by foot shames, if you did not hear the episode, where were we talking about foot shames? My bell is sitting on the table, and I am too lazy to lean forward, so I just ring it with my toes.
We're still gonna sell that and maybe make thousands. We will finally turn a profit with this podcast.
That's
By
what
me
it took.
ringing bells with my toes.
Yes.
I could write people's names, I guess.
Ooh.
That would be a thing.
Can
Oh, God.
I already don't like where this is going.
Same.
we record you doing like the carol of the bells?
I
Like-
probably could do it if I had enough bells.
All right. We're going to end this podcast because we've got a lot of planning to do. So everybody say bye.
Bye.
That's going to do it for this episode of The Geek Awakens. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, shoot us an email at thegeekawakenspodcast@gmail.com.
It would be a shame if you didn't follow us on Facebook and Instagram at the Geek Awakens Podcast or on Twitter at Geek Awakens.
Theme music created and produced by E. Cannon Beats.
Our logo was designed by Shay McCain.
Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time. We're boldly gone.